Welcome everybody back to the DomCast episode 51, here to cover an NBA final series that is tied 1-1. Honestly, this podcast shouldn't take long. It's probably gonna set a record in terms of short podcasts. Well, for the DomCast anyways. Should be fun. If you have been having fun listening to the pod, it is on Spotify, it's on Apple Podcasts, it is on YouTube, and y'all rating it helps across the platform. So if you're on Spotify, you see the stars, you just gotta press it. Apple Podcasts let you leave reviews, and of course on YouTube there is the like button. It still throws me that dislikes are gone. I look at my videos on my main channel sometime and I'm like, you really can't give negative feedback anymore besides comments, which can also be hidden. That's crazy. The propaganda you can push on yourself is crazy. Anyways, this NBA final series between the Warriors and Celtics has been very, I would say, despite the scores, I would say interesting so far in terms of the third quarter. Warriors looking like a storybook in terms of that historic fourth quarter run by the Celtics that ended up helping them snag game one. And if you're Boston up to this point, like, mission accomplished. Again, if you listen to this podcast a couple of days later, know that it was done after game two. So this is after they leave Golden State. And yeah, mission fucking accomplished. They left 1-1. They got the first game, which left them virtually no pressure to win the second game. Now, I'm not going to say I'm satisfied with it. I thought that there were legitimate ways for them to end up leaving 2-0. I thought that was very much possible. They started game two in the way that I had hoped, and then it kind of fell apart. But a lot of things that they were doing to start game two was the reasons why. Well, I picked Golden State to win game two. The type of team that they are and the type of composure they have and the things they've been through, I did not think they were gonna allow themselves to go back to Boston down 0-2. However, I thought there were ways that Boston could have got that done. So not satisfied, but also surprised at the reaction. I mean, I get it. When your team wins, you talk, but definitely surprised at the reaction after game two of people who weren't fans of Boston, because it was like in a playoff series in general, but especially a final series, if you are the team that doesn't have home court advantage, the very early goal is to take home court advantage, and they did that. So regardless of how, that's they're headed back to Boston with a chance. If they won both home games, they got a chance to go at 3-1 there, but that's in the future. We'll talk about what actually happened here and what's the likelihood that they would end up going up 3-1, because again, Golden State deserves all the credit and respect in the world. This is a hell of a team that is not even what they used to be, and that's one of the things we'll be talking about. So first of all, game one, we'll just go in order and then we'll talk about some of the more general stuff. Game one, I was very, 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 very confused and shocked about the defensive game plan against Steph. Because, and not that, it wasn't that they just left them open. I was confused as especially the coach that Ime Udoka has been. It's like, why did you leave him open? He had a 21-point first quarter explosion, practically because the Celtics came out and said, all right, we're going to test Steph Curry and come out and play heavy drop coverage, which means, and did y'all listen to the finals preview podcast I made, right? You remember when I said there was no way the Celtics were going to come out and drop coverage? They came out in a heavy drop coverage. And the reason I said that wouldn't happen is because I didn't feel like there was a need for them to test that. Like, why test if Steph can make shots or not? I know he's had a slump this year, and I know his playoff shooting numbers haven't been as a whole what they've been in previous years, and I get that, but in a series where he just has to win 4 more games to collect a title, why even test the question, can the greatest shooter of all time by far make open shots? And so he did that. Boston couldn't get over the screens, and then once he was on the other side of it, it's like Al Horford or Rob Williams way back, and that was just way too easy. So scored 21 points in the first, scored 13 points the rest of the game. It's because Boston tightened up the defense on the fly adjustment, which once again, that's just more confusion for me, because you saw that Marcus Smart clip that they tried to take and twist into Miami slander, where he was like, oh, this isn't the Miami series. And then the eye emojis came out, and all he was literally saying is, it's not the Miami series. We can't play back on their shooters. We can't guard the screens and drop is all he was saying. He was saying that the big men have to be up. But also that just feels like something we all knew. And so I don't know. I always tell y'all I have a really hard time understanding what happens in professional coaching sometimes, but I guess they just wanted to test it, and they had that adjustment ready. And so after that, Rob, whoever was on the other side of the screen, came up. They tried their hardest to fight over, and they basically, Steph would come off, and practically if they didn't get over the screen, he would still end up seeing two bodies, one on the front and one on the side, until the ball defender recovered. And then that was kind of that. It got really tough, and he wasn't getting looks. Now, where that ended up mattering was the main question I asked in the preview. What are you going to get from Klay Thompson? It sounded like a simple question, but I asked it for a reason. It's because if you've been watching the Warriors, Klay is not the old Klay. He's still there, and he'll still hit some shots, but he's not the old Klay. Those one-leg shots that he takes, the little fades in the mid-range, hell, the open threes, the open transition threes, they are not automatic right now. It's not like it's not as scary as it used to be. So I wondered about that. Who's the number two? Who's just the consistent number two after Steph? And I think in game one, that kind of ended up hurting, because in that third quarter run that they went on, and throughout some of the game, Otto Porter was hitting and extending the lead. But the third quarter in the first game never got that out of hand. The third quarter was okay. They're hitting some shots. Otto Porter, he's at a certain point, I think he was 3 for 3 on threes, and I can't remember exactly how much he ended up with, but I was going by the end of the third. Okay, they're down 12 points. They just took Golden State's best shot. Jason Tatum has done nothing in terms of scoring the ball. They can put together a run here at the beginning of this fourth, make this a close game. Now, I didn't expect the type of run that they got. That was not in question. Them hitting damn near every three-pointer that they took. What was the run? 40-17. It was the biggest fourth quarter turnaround in history, I believe, or I don't know if it's finals history or NBA history, but the biggest turnaround when a team enters down double digits or 12 points. They turned around and had a 40-something run, and that caused controversy, because on one hand, you had people going, why did Steph play in this certain rotation? Of course, that's the golden Steve Kerr question. There was that. But then also people were going, well, Boston's not going to make threes like that all the time, so they've pretty much escaped with game one. The Warriors could have easily had won that game, which, yeah, there's some truth to that for sure. That was pretty much what Draymond said on his podcast at the end, or I don't know if it was his podcast or in a press conference, but practically said, hey, those guys shooting that well, in terms of Derek White, in terms of, I believe, Al Horford, basically Celtics role players shooting that well. He said, we'll live with that. We'll take that, because again, some truth. He's saying when it comes to great teams, you just take away what you can. You're not going to take away everything. And if a team gets hot, then they just blew the whole casket on the operation, basically. And so that's what happened. That's what happened at the end of game 4 there. The thing I will say, because yeah, there was some shots that Derek White hit that were just bullshit. One or two of them. Definitely the one where Steph had him smothered. Thing I will say about Mr. White, though, is that he has been creeping back to his Spurs shooting days. If you remember anything about him, he played for San Antonio. He was not a self-cover from three. Might not have been an excellent three-point shooter or a great three-point shooter. He was not a self-cover, though. He came to Boston and he was a self-cover. And so as the playoffs have drug on, you've seen that getting better. You've seen him, first of all, he's never been unwilling to take those threes. He'll shoot 2 or 3 of them a game. He's never been unwilling to shoot them when he's open, because he knows that he can shoot. He knows he can make those. I would say for a large part, especially in shots that Boston is needed, he's shot it pretty well. And so he ended up with 20 plus points, a huge reason they came back. His defense has been good as well. And the Celtics were able to overcome the Tatum performance, because there's just been a lot of growth. There's been a lot of growth in that pairing between he and Jaylen Brown. You remember the first game of the season for the Boston Celtics when Tatum played, the Celtics were playing the New York Knicks, I think, and it was a hood classic for sure, probably OT or double OT. It's a great game, but Jason Tatum shot, what was it? A horrible percentage, something of 30. He took 30 shots and had 4 assists. I want to say 7 of 30. It was really, really bad. And it was, NBA Twitter was fun that night because it was just like, yo, he really has that Dion Waiters quote up right now about the if that's a real quote, the meme, you know, the meme quote. I'm not even sure if Dion Waiters actually said it, but the thing about going 0 for 100, Tatum would not stop shooting. He had the mentality of whatever, it's just a missed shot. He just would not stop shooting. I even think he ended up taking the game winning shot or the game winning attempt. Meanwhile, Jaylen Brown probably had 40 something that night, and we were just going, why did Tatum get that shot? And so this has been a lot of growth because in finals game 1, he ended up with 13 assists. And he was much more willing when he didn't have it going, it seemed, to A, find the right play in terms of passing, and B, just taking a back seat because Jaylen Brown had it going. When the fourth quarter came up, it was like, all right. And I totally agreed with the decision. If you were at the watch party, you know I got exactly what I wanted. I said, this is the Tatum cold game. It's normally game 3. This time it's game 1. This is that game where Tatum just can't hit anything. Even the easy shots just aren't going. I don't know what it is. It's maybe it's his deal with the devil like Steph had in 2016. But Tatum, maybe this is just his deal. He gets one game random out of a series where nothing is going. And so when I saw that, I was just thinking, it's Jaylen Brown time. Let him cook, because whatever happens, we're not getting any shots from Tatum this quarter. And they did that. They seem to have understood that really well. Jaylen Brown, again, able to get to his spot in the mid-range, not afraid to take the 3, will get to the rim. He did all of the above and led that comeback. And then everybody else hit their shots. And so definitely a bit of a perfect storm, but I just don't want to let the Jaylen Brown run in that quarter go unnoticed. And the fact that Tatum did not shoot himself into oblivion. So definitely growth from the first game of the season to the first game of the NBA Finals. In a season that's been all about growth for them. So those things happened, and Boston walked away with game 1, which, again, however it happened, mission accomplished, because now it's a tied series. It's 0-0 going back to Boston. It's 1-1, but I'm just saying 0-0. Like, nobody has the lead. Going back to Boston. Game 2, this is where this is why I picked Golden State to win game 2, is because I said, you know what, after game 1 and they survived that third quarter run, I know Boston has the basketball ways that they can win. They have a defensive plan against Steph to not just let him score 21 in the first quarter, because they exercised that almost immediately. So they've got that. They've got multiple ways to score. They've clearly been able to create open threes, and Tatum is probably going to have a bounce back game. I knew that was going to happen. You know what you've got in Jaylen Brown if you need it, which actually they started the game with that. So I looked and said there are ways that they can do this, but I'm worried about which Boston gets in game 2. I'm worried about that because it does not seem, it is not pressure. When no matter how much you say or tell the media we're not happy about that game, whatever you say, when you win game 1 of the finals, all the pressure is on that home team, because if they leave without a win, the series, I won't say it's over, but it's effectively over. Especially if you're playing a great defensive team like Boston. You lose both your home games, unless there's an injury on the other side, it's effectively over. So I was just going, man, with this lack of pressure, lack of urgency that'll probably happen with the Celtics, I wonder if that'll end up showing through. And really, I thought that would show through in the first quarter. And this isn't to avoid giving Golden State credit. That's coming. That part is coming. But they came out hot. They came out tight defensively. They did not show Steph the same looks from the first quarter. They, like I said, let Jaylen Brown cook early. Tatum started having the shot going early. It looked for a split second, like they might be able to run with it and keep a 12 to 15 point lead until around the fourth quarter, when it inevitably, or probably the third quarter, when it would inevitably shrink. I thought it was going to be that type of game. But guess what happened, y'all? Do you remember when I did the podcast preview for the series, and I said, I'm worried about Boston's turnovers, even though the Warriors turn over the ball as well. I'm really worried about Boston's turnovers against this specific team. They turned it over 7 times in the first quarter. 7 times. And if you go back and watch that first, yeah, sure, give Golden State's defense some credit, but also, boy, was the Celtics just putting themselves in tough positions. I'm talking like dribbling through tight spots, walking into spaces where you just knew there was a high chance of a turnover. There was one play later, not in the first quarter, but later where Boston's play didn't do anything for about 7 or 8 seconds, and then it ended up with Jaylen Brown having the ball in the wing. And he got trapped immediately. Like, he got trapped. You could see it coming from a mile away. He had to throw a bad pass. It was a turnover. Overall, oh gosh, I just looked at the number. How many game two? So they had 7 in the first, which effectively erased that lead that they had. That would have gone a long way to keep, but whatever. That got erased. They ended up with 18 turnovers for the game. They ended up with 18 turnovers on the game. You just can't do that against Golden State. Because not even whether they're going to convert immediately on those points, but the margin of error is tiny because that third quarter run is coming. I'm going to get to the third quarter run, though. I'm going to get to the third quarter run. Shout out to Steph. Even with the good defense, he found ways. He found cracks in it. And you know what a big part of that was? Because, again, they did not come out in the same super heavy drop that they used. He ended up with 29 points, 5 of 12 from 3. So 9 of 21 overall isn't pretty, but when Steph is hitting 5 of 12 from 3, probably good. Got to the free throw line. It got 7 free throws. But you know what really helped change the equation just a little bit? Gary Payton. That return helped. Now, I had said that I was wondering when he was going to play or if he could play. It didn't sound like Steve Kerr did not make it sound like he was ready to shoot yet. And he came in and he made a 3-pointer. After missing both his free throws, he made a 3. But not just defensively, though. It's because of how he changes the lineup and what he allows Golden State to do in terms of going small, which really, really helps, especially if they've got other things going. Just because, again, there was one play in the first where Steph Curry switches... They switch Al Horford on Steph Curry, which, by the way, I'm going to keep referencing the preview. Just, I know you're tired of it. I'm going to keep referencing the podcast preview. Where I said they didn't want Steph Curry. They weren't going to want that matchup consistently to go to it. Well, if you can get him completely on like an ISO side, yeah, they like that with Curry on Horford. If you can get him with spaced, if you can get the floor spaced and you can get him on an ISO side, yeah, I think they like Curry on Horford for sure. But in the first quarter, it wasn't space. They got that switch. Curry tried to get by Horford. Horford stayed with him. Not only that, but Draymond was spaced on the wing, which you know what that means. Robert Williams was right there. Steph thought he might have had a 3. Rob shades over a little bit. It's not there. I think that play ended up in a late foul, but Horford was able to stay with him really well. So obviously not ideal to have him switched onto a guard, but if the space is a certain way, he's versatile enough to be able to stay with him. Anyways, Gary Payton, when he's on the floor, they like to use him as a screener as well. GP is also being guarded a lot of the times by a big. So whether that's Rob Will, whether that's Horford, they have him matched up on a bit because Gary Payton, his shots, his perimeter shooting, like it's okay. But out of everybody else on the floor, you probably would rather the play in with him shooting than anyone else. And so that's the guy that's the candidate that you roam on. Problem is when he screens, his quickness, how fast he's able to dive, how fast he's able to maneuver, that hurts Boston quite a bit when you have a big guarding him, because now you have to worry about the pressure that Gary Payton is creating with a roll. And you have to worry about the speed of Steph and how quickly the ball defender was able to get over the screen or how he was able to stay with Steph. You have to worry about a lot of things that involve speed when you're doing this guard screening. And so that is currently, it's funny, out of everything that happened, right? Boston was down damn near 30 in that game. Out of everything that happened, I am currently most rattled by how Ime is going to adjust to that. Because Golden State found something with it. They found something with the Gary Payton screens. They found something in terms of being able to, because again, they're not going heavy drop on Steph, but sometimes you almost have to because Gary Payton is so quick with it that, and if he pulls down after he set the screen, if that's Horford there, that's Rob. If you don't want to give up an open layup or end up giving up a 3 on the opposite wing, you pretty much have to drop down a little bit. Unless you just want a full trap Steph, which again, with the Warriors movement, full trapping Steph all the time is kind of like a last resort, because that's going to create other open shots. At that point, you're just daring that, let's say Wiggins is going to miss, or Poole, or Clay, or Otto, which I think Otto is going to get a lot more minutes as the series goes up. I think Porter is going to get a lot more minutes, because the more Golden State can space, the more they can deter Boston from going to a full-time trap on Steph, which this team is good enough that I don't think you can successfully full-time trap him. So yeah, be on the lookout for that. When you watch Game 3, watch what Boston does, or if they do anything to adjust to the Gary Payton screens. That's currently what's got me feeling some type of way. Because when it was Looney screening or Draymond, when it's anybody else screening, I'm like, all right, you know, they can adjust like they did in Game 1, and they can show and whatever if Draymond gets the ball. Like they'll probably get some points out of it, but everything just happens much quicker with Payton on the floor. Then obviously, yeah, his defense as well. You get, excuse me. Hope the mic didn't catch that. That's so rude. If you yeah, on the defensive lineups, for obvious reasons, GP helps. So his addition helps us quite a bit. So yeah, the third quarter run happens, and honestly, I just can't figure out how. It's like a goddamn magic trick, and this has been happening forever with the Warriors. It's been happening, just dates back. This is as old as time itself, but it's so frustrating now that I'm watching my team go through it, because how do they just magically decide, all right, the pressure is all the way up, we're gonna hit shots, the momentum is gonna shift? And that's happened twice now. If you're the Warriors, that's probably why you feel good. It's because you're going, okay, well, I think it takes some overlooking of a lot of other basketball stuff that happened, but if you want to feel good, you can really go and say, all right, well, this third quarter run happened twice, and Boston, they survived the first one enough. They were only down 12 by the time the fourth quarter came around, and then they had the historic shooting. So, but still though, the third quarter run did happen, and then in Game 2 it happened, and then it did not survive. If we can get that going every game, and we're always able to build a double-digit lead, then the pressure is on the Celtics. The pressure is on them to come back. And in a game like last time, you also have Jordan Poole going too. You have Jordan Poole going from the 3-point line. Hell, you've got pretty much everybody contributing something. They're all doing that. The lead is probably going to be too big by the time they start to mount this comeback. And so Poole, obviously, you've seen the memes, but yeah, he got, if he's out there, he's got to be contributing that type of Game 2 performance, because otherwise his defense is not great. And so he's got to be giving you what you hoped he would when the playoffs started. Speaking of defense, by the way, I think there was a segment on this podcast where we kind of talked about Steph's defense and praised it a little bit. You know what? As a matter of fact, yeah, it was in the preview pod. I did do such a thing. And, you know, just if you are still in denial about his defense, go and watch it in Game 2. He was nice. He was very nice. The activity is great. He's very physical. He's making the right rotations and reads. Like Steph on the defensive end, again, hasn't been bad for a while, but especially in Game 2, he was flat out good. He was flat out good. And that's a huge thing for the Warriors that's a huge factor for them, just because the one thing that you can do is say he's undersized. And so if you can get a switch with JT or Jaylen Brown on him, you can get a look, whether it's shooting over him. He got switched out to JT a couple of times, and JT just shot it like he wasn't there. So you can always do that because of his size. If you have star scoring wings, you can do that. But the fact that you can't abuse everything else is really big. The fact that you're saying, okay, the one thing you'll be able to take advantage of is his size. If you can't add to that, that's a really big factor for Golden State, because I just get the feeling that people have thought that he's been bad at a lot of things that he's not bad at. Just because out of the whole Warriors lineup, he might be the target, doesn't make him a bad defender. Just got to be nuanced there. So Steph defense. Other than that, I think the Celtics just rushed a hell of a lot. We talked about the turnovers in the first quarter and the overall tally for the game, but what got especially frustrating to watch, 2 turnovers in the first quarter. They were Marcus Smart just throwing a pass a little bit earlier. They were trying to be creative. I think he tried to hit JT on a cut for one of them. Can't remember who tried to hit on the other. They were really nice ideas, but the pass came about a second too late. So got to clean stuff like that up. And then there were just times where they just, even if it wasn't a turnover, they just rushed, man. Al Horford had Steph Curry on him, which again, we're talking about the size thing, but as soon as they saw the matchup, the Warriors saw that matchup, they immediately started doing the work early to take away the advantage. However, Horford didn't necessarily do much to help with that either. Or to help himself with that either. Him trying to post up as quickly as possible, him trying to get the ball as quickly as possible. As soon as he got it, he just kind of started barreling and nothing came of it. And I was just going, man, that either has to be 2 points from Horford, or it has to be a well-spaced floor and an open shot for somebody else. And instead, it just turned into a very rushed missed shot. And rushing was the theme. There was a time during the Warriors run where it felt like, okay, you can survive this. And the Celtics just insisted on taking very quick shots. Jaylen Brown early in the shot clock on a fast break did like a 180 spinning fadeaway. I'm like, bro, what is that? There was another play earlier in the first half where he had Steph on him, and he took instead of, again, putting pressure and either getting his own shot or getting somebody else's shot, he took a step back three with Steph on him. I'm like, what is that? There was those two. And again, just many more rushed plays of trying to step through space that isn't space and getting the ball stripped. And that right there is what really killed them, because every single time they could start to build something, they had the building blocks of momentum, they would shoot themselves in the foot, and they would either lose the possession or get a bad shot out of it. And that was the urgency I'm talking about. I really felt like they just didn't. They had the lead, and so they were playing like, fuck it. They were playing like, if we can get some really quick buckets, if we do this really fast and just go on a massive run, we can get it, but we have the lead if we don't. I'm sure that's not how they were thinking, but that was the vibe of their play, though. That was the vibe, and that's what I was worried about. And so overall, that lead is swelled way too quickly, and Golden State was able to walk away and tie it. And, disappointing, because again, there was a chance, I thought, for Boston to get it. And I picked Golden State to win it, but I just thought there was a chance they could end the series early. That's not happening. They're going back to Boston tied. So that'll be interesting going forward. Again, the Gary. Oh yeah, one more thing. Sorry, Game 2, Draymond and his tech. The receipts are there. We were doing a watch party. We will be doing a watch party for pretty much this whole series unless I end up at one of the games. So twitch.tv/Dom_2K. You see it in the comment section and description. The receipts are there. I did not want Draymond thrown out. Because like I told y'all, I'm on some Goku shit right now. I want to see the best challenges possible, the hardest road possible. I want to see them beat the Warriors in a way that's not deniable. And there's already the factor that people are going to be talking about with Klay Thompson not being the same, which kind of makes this in a way, if Boston wins, I feel like people are going to kind of compare it to the Bulls beating the Lakers for the first time. That's when LA was officially through. They didn't even have Kareem at that point, but not a 1-to-1 comparison, but just in terms of the shooting, where Klay is not great right now. And it's not a surprise. Again, it was the X factor I had for the series, but it's not a surprise. I'm sure he'll get it going for a certain game in the series, and there'll probably be a 30-point game. But as far as the consistency and getting that from him all the time, he came off of 2 major injuries. He's been gone for 2 years, and the first day back, he's playing a season all the way into June. I know he missed a lot of this year, but again, like, this is a huge ramp up just to go from 0 back to the NBA Finals. There's that, and then there's he's not the same defender that he once was. He tries, but he's not the same lockdown guy that he once was. And then the shot, I'd just been worrying. Those are the 2 things we were wondering about all this time when you have, the lower body injuries that he had. So people are already probably going to say this is if they ended up losing, people would probably already start saying that this is an older Warriors team. I can see that coming in the future, but whatever. I don't really care. But the part about Draymond, though, yes, call it like it is. If this was a regular season game, he would have probably got tossed. As a matter of fact, I don't even know if he would have. Let's just put it this way: that was a double tech situation. Of course, it was a double tech situation. He already had one. They got into a match that probably warranted a tech on both sides, and it didn't happen. They didn't want to throw Draymond out. He even admitted as much and said he's earned that benefit of the doubt or the favor or whatever he said. And I didn't think they were going to throw him out, because to alter a game in a series like that, I just feel like it would have to be egregious. The act would have had to have been egregious, is what I think. It would have had to have been kind of beyond the shadow of a doubt in that situation. And the little talking match and little small touchy match that they had, I just didn't think that was enough. And I didn't want him to get thrown out on what would have essentially ended up being a technicality. So I know that was a big part of the conversation. I will say there was definitely some questionable ass calls in that first quarter, but whatever, we move over here. We're not going into a deep dive of the refs. I don't do that. But that specific situation, I can see why people were mad with it. I personally just didn't want Draymond thrown out unless he did something that was so ridiculous. If he had kicked him or elbowed him, then I'm just like, all right, well, he got to go. But for that, nah, that just wasn't enough. And I wanted to see them beat them at full strength. Gary Payton is back. I'm glad he's back because clearly he adds some value. Doesn't want to win this series where they can say anybody was missing, even though inevitably in all these years somebody's missing from an important series. Get it as healthy as possible. So yeah, going into game 3, I mean, Boston has got they got a great opportunity. I will say, like, unbiased, I think they're going to come out of it 2-2. I remember in the Miami series, there's a tweet that said all Boston has to do to go to the finals now is win all their home games, which sounded, and then they ended up losing 2 of them. It sounds way more simple than it is. It's easy to look and just say, just win 2 home games now and you're up 3-1. Could happen, but I think realistically they'll come out of it 2-2. I'm not sure the order yet, but this is a chess match. The next thing that they're gonna have to figure out is what to do with how much you're gonna live with Gary Payton taking open shots, how much you're gonna if you're gonna live with putting a big on him, and if that doesn't happen, then is that double big rotation gonna last now? How much are you gonna be running that if they're gonna be running Gary Payton a lot? And are you gonna keep your one big on him? They just have a lot to figure out with that. The turnovers, if they can clean some of that up, but once again, it just kind of seems like that's who Boston is. Making sure that you limit Steph as much as possible. Once again, 9 of 21 it's not bad, but it's not like he absolutely just destroyed them on the shooting end anyways. Of course, his gravity and then the momentum shots. The one momentum shot he hit where he basically forced Boston to a drop because he was at the hash, and at that point you're up very, very high, but that's Steph range. So if he comes off screens at the hash, you're just gonna have to live with the fact that your big man's gonna have to be at the hash with him. So there's that. Like I said, I'm sure we'll see more and more Warriors and ball as time goes on. Even though Kevon Looney, once again holding his own, he was responsible for 2 or 3 of those steals in the first quarter. So the hands are there from him. It's not like you got to get rid of him. He's done good things for them. And then hoping we don't get another cold JT game, which there's one picture from game 2 where Tatum he has Jordan Poole guarding him, and the rest of Golden State is practically in help position, so he doesn't end up driving. They had a clear agenda to not let him get going to the tune of like a 40-point game. So there's a lot to work with here. I'm excited for it. I'm excited for the adjustments that come from both sides. Aside from some of what we discussed in detail here, I guess my biggest thing would be the turnovers, just because don't do anything to help Klay Thompson get going. And so if we're going to have 18 turnovers in the next game, and some of those turn into a couple of Klay Thompson fast break threes and they actually go this time, prepare for the game where he scores 30, man. Prepare for the game where he scores 30 or 35. It's not exactly how it used to be, but prepare yourself. That could come at a time where you're down 2-1 and then he has that game and now you're down 3-1. So yeah, just do everything you can to prepare for that. And that's, Rob Williams. The health is clearly, the man is doing everything he can. I honestly would not be surprised if he was game 3 or 4. Marcus Smart crashed into his leg. I would not be surprised. And I think it was a surgically repaired knee too. I would not be surprised if he didn't play one of these. And I think they're clearly only getting about half of him when he is on the floor. So limping to the finish line, he is. That's basically all I have to say about these games, man. Told you this was going to be a short one. I almost thought about making it as short as a barbershop talk, but I wanted to make sure I hit every point that I could. We'll see how much of this comes to life, and we will see what happens in Boston. Let me know what you think about this series now that it's 1-1. Where do you think it is going? And who do you think is going to win it still after the first 2 games? Be sure to hit the like button, comment, sub, rate it if you're on Spotify or Apple, and hit the bell next to my name if you are on YouTube to get a notification every time these drop. Thank you, and I will see y'all on the next one.